Hello, I'm David Breeden. I'm the senior minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, a historically humanist congregation. And this is Coffee and Wisdom, when we take some looks at theological and philosophical questions from a humanist perspective. This month, I'm going to be talking about the relationship between human animals and the rest of the animals. I'm calling it Holy Animal Kingdom, and this week, and the beasts of the field. Of course, we know the stories of from the ancient world about what animals mean to us. We've got lions lying down with lambs, and by golly, if you do a web search on lions lying down with lambs, you're going to find a lot of pictures out there. Actually, it's a misquote or a misremembering of what is actually being said. The idea comes from the book of Isaiah in Hebrew scripture 11:6. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. That's how it actually goes. But I guess lions and lambs are more picturesque in some way. And so it's been changed a little over time. Well, the human relationship with animals and our depiction of animals is very, very old. The oldest cave paintings that we have illustrations of animals in them, our interactions with animals. Um, of course, a lot of them are about hunting, and some speculation of anthropologists is about the idea that there was an idea of a magically encompassing the ability to deal with the animals by these kinds of depictions. That may also be part of the origin of the shaman within human tribes. Doing dances that would magically make the hunts easier for the hunters. They Hunting is dangerous, it's tiring, and you don't always get something. So magic would be something that people would very much like to have involved. Well, Aesop's fables are still very much with us today. These are the oldest written accounts that we have of animals and people. Usually, the animals in Aesop's fables are anthropomorphized, turned into human characteristics. Aesop, if he existed as a Greek, was somewhere in the 620 to 564 BCE, so a very long time ago. He was, if he existed, collecting oral stories into one place. And then his name becomes synonymous with these stories. And so lots of things become Aesop fables that actually aren't Aesop fables. So it's a very interesting kind of synergy that goes on there. But these stories are very much with us today. In learning labs all across the country, we will see Aesop's fables. A famous one is this one. An old cat wanted to catch all the mice in the barn. One day, the mice met to talk about the great harm the cat was doing to them. Each mouse tried to think of a plan by which to keep out of the cat's way. Do as I say, said an old gray mouse that was thought to be very wise. Do as I say, hang a bell on the cat's neck. Then, when we hear it ring, we will know that she is coming and can scamper out of her way. Now, one of the things about this particular telling of the story is it reverses the old Aesop way of telling the story, in that it is an old mouse who is having this brilliant idea of belling the cat. In most of the versions of this belling the cat story, actually, the old mouse says something else. This proposal met with the general applause until an old mouse got up and said, "That is all very well, but who is to bell the cat?" The mice looked at one another and nobody spoke. Then the old mouse said, "It is easy to propose impossible remedies." So the wise old mouse is saying this is not going to work out. And it's a good story about how we can have brilliant ideas that on the ground, when the rubber meets the road, actually, they don't work out so well. Aesop's fables have been told and retold and retold. They have, in more recent years, turned into more children's stories. Walter Crane, Brit, who lived from 1845 to 1915, was one of the early illustrators of children's story Aesop fables. A Baby's Own Aesop is a late 19th century book. There are all kinds of Aesop fable tellings and printings. If you wanted to be an antiquarian book collector, you could do better than starting with Aesop's fables. These books are very valuable. One from 1692, Fables of Aesop and Other Eminent Mythologists with Morals and Reflections. And the illustrations in these are often very whimsical, and the printing of the time is reflected in the development of the printing of the time is definitely reflected in how these things are illustrated and how large they are. The big folio books were very, very expensive even in their day. And so you see a lot of very small editions of Aesop's fables from the 17, 18, 1900s. The Aesop fable printing in European countries is based on an older idea from manuscript days of something we call the bestiary. The medieval bestiary was a movement among monastics to illustrate ideas of animals being teaching us stories. And they were sometimes Aesop fables, unknown to those monks, but sometimes they were made up in another kind of sort of folk tradition. One of the favorite things in bestiaries is elephants. And most Europeans had not seen an elephant. There was obviously no photos at the time. So these drawings get way, way outlandish. A favorite of the bestiaries in telling their story is the lion. Again, most Europeans in the Middle Ages had not seen a lion. One of the myths that grew up in the medieval bestiary is that lion mothers lick their babies into shape after they're born. A very fanciful idea, but the story that lions were licking their babies had gotten into the European mind. Oh yeah, they're sort of like cats, aren't they? You see a lot of elephants, and again, very fanciful elephants appearing in the bestiary. An interesting thing also is we see unicorns and we see dragons. The dragons of medieval bestiaries are not these huge things that we see in American movies nowadays. The medieval dragon in the European consciousness, anyway, was usually around the size of an elephant, and very much more lizard-like than what we see in later tellings. Often we will have an elephant fighting with some kind of dragon in the illustrations. Again, very, very fanciful. Crocodiles also figured into the tales of Europeans. Again, most Europeans of the day had not seen a crocodile. So the crocodile illustrations are often very much like dragons, except dragons are a little bit taller. And they did know that crocodiles were fairly low to the ground in Europe. A favorite of the time that has stayed with us in mythology is the idea of the phoenix. You're going to see a lot of illustration of the phoenix, always, of course, with the fire going on and throwing itself into the fire to be reborn. And by golly, that's an illustrative story in the Christian mind as well. You also see a lot of geese. Well, why would we see geese in a best supposed to be teaching us Christian values? Well, there was a story in the day that geese had actually saved Rome when some of the Huns were attacking. So those of us who have lived around geese know that geese are great watchdogs. They will sound off when they see something coming. And so the story that they had saved Rome from a brutal secret attack. Again, we see the knights of the day fighting the various dragons of the day. Again, the dragons of this time period are usually a lot smaller than we would imagine them nowadays. Uh, Fanciful pictures of lions are everywhere. The lions almost always have manes, but they didn't quite know what that was supposed to look like. The bat figures in quite a bit in medieval bestiaries. They knew that the bat kind of had a human face, and they knew it was kind of mouse-like. And so you see a lot of fanciful kind of additions putting these ideas together. One of the most famous after the phoenix is something you're going to see quite a bit if you begin to look around at these. And again, a web search will reveal lots and lots of these. But is the idea of the pelicano, the pelican. And what you're going to see is a mother pelican ripping her heart out, and a couple of babies are waiting for the blood. Now, what in the heck would this story mean? Well, I went to CatholicEducation.com, a site that's very much with us today, and it says this. The symbolism of the mother pelican feeding her little baby pelicans is rooted in an ancient legend which preceded Christianity. The legend was that in time of famine, the mother pelican wounded herself, striking her breast with the beak to feed her young with her blood to prevent starvation. Another version of the legend was that the mother fed her dying young with her blood to revive them from death, but in turn lost her own life. So the mother pelican is sacrificing herself by tearing out her heart. And yes, if you are a Roman Catholic, this is going to remind you of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the sacrifice of Jesus of his own life to save you and I. And so that's really how the bestiary is working. It's very imbued with Christianity, what we would call Roman Catholicism nowadays. And these are illustrative, not really for children, although the idea of a line between childhood and adulthood was very different in the European Middle Ages. Another story that got a lot of play in the day was the idea that there are some sailors out, and they are tired of rowing, and so they want to rest for a while, and they see an island. They go land on the island and build a fire in order to eat. And then, by golly, that island, they have burned the back of a whale, and the whale dives down, and the people are all drowned. Again, the whimsicality of it, Europeans had not tended to see whales. And so usually the whale is a big fish. And this does feed into the Jonah story that is very much part of the Christian storytelling. There are a lot of fanciful animals as well. The belief that some nights of the year animals would stand up on their hind legs, get out their musical instruments, and entertain themselves with wild dances. Very fanciful. And this is before Polaroids came along. So, how the illustrations are imagined and how they spread through the European monasteries and then thus out into the churches. It's an interesting story because there's no printing presses in those particular days. Again, dragons are everywhere, and some illustrations will have them as bird-like. Some will be lions with women's heads. The idea of the mermaid comes from the bestiary tradition. A lot of whimsicality going on in those illustrations. So that's an older form with Aesop and the bestiary of using the animal as a way to teach us some kind of moral out there. Well, on Thursday, I do want to look some more at the beasts of the field. And on Thursday, I do want to look at how more contemporary, late 19th and then 20th century ideas of animals are, and the telling of how animals are enters the consciousness out there. So that's it for Coffee and Wisdom today. Thanks a whole lot for listening, and I'll be back with some Animal Farm kinds of things on Thursday. Thanks for listening.